Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Terry Ward, the Cato-Meridian Superintendent. We also have with us today
Elizabeth Kupiak, Assistant Superintendent.
And today what we're going to do is take you through our 2022-23 school budget. Let's get started. Our budget focus. Each year when we're developing a budget, we focus on our three main areas. Our three main areas are academic success for all, with an ELA focus, our wellness, which is our social emotional development component, and operations, which are facility improvements. These three pieces in our strategic plan drive our thinking when we're preparing our school budget each year. Educational programming for the future. This year, our budget will reflect these three pieces as well. Investment in PLCs, enhancement of curriculum and curriculum development, and the continuation of our summer programming for our K through 6 students. Other budget benefits this year. Yes, we're still going to maintain our low student-teacher ratios. We have now created a facilities replacement plan, an athletic uniform replacement plan, and a capital outlay project. And Ms. Kubiak will be talking about each of these later on in the presentation.
As we worked to develop this year's budget, there were some very specific areas that we needed to keep in the forefront. We're currently, as a country, experiencing the highest rate of inflation in recent memory. Utility costs have increased dramatically. Fuel costs have increased dramatically. In addition, we're seeing a 3% increase in terms of our health insurance costs, as well as an almost a % increase in terms of our teacher retirement contributions. This next slide shows some statistics from the U.S. Bureau of Labor. It shows that inflation has risen over 8.5% in the last 12 months. Energy costs have increased over 30% in commodities and services. These factors we considered as we worked to build a conservative budget to serve our students. The budget that we're presenting to the voters this year is $23,127,972. This reflects a budget-to-budget increase of 2.98% and a budget dollar increase of $668,691. The budget that we're presenting to the voters is well below the inflation rate of 8.5%. I'd like to take a moment to talk a bit about Cato-Meridian's anticipated state aid for the 2022-2023 school year. I'm sure the community has seen the news reports indicating that there have been significant increases in terms of aid for school districts. The initial state aid runs for Cato-Meridian indicated almost a 7% increase in terms of state aid. But when you look closely at those numbers, you will see that that is not an accurate reflection of what we believe we will receive based on historical data. We do anticipate an increase in foundation aid of 3.01%. We are not anticipating the additional UPK aid that was promised within the legislative budget. And the reason for that is that that money only goes to school districts that are moving to a full day UPK program. Because we already have a full day UPK program, we will not receive that funding. Other aid increases that were reflected in the state aid runs have been offset by reductions. And historically, we have received less state aid in areas of BOCES and transportation. So overall, we believe we'll see a net increase of state aid of 3.01%. I would like to point out that this year's budget is below what we're anticipating receiving. Here's a slide that talks about our tax levy for the upcoming school year. Our tax levy limit for this year, and that would be the amount that we could raise our levy by, was 3.98%. We have recommended an adopted tax levy increase of 2.5%, which is in line with our historical increases and will allow us to continue to provide the best education for our students. This slide reflects a more in-depth view of our tax levy. We are anticipating levying $6,358,145. From that levy, $75,000 goes to the Lang Library. So Cato-Meridian school levy for next year will be $6,283,145. And that reflects a 2.5% increase in terms of our levy. This is a slide that just kind of gives the community a large picture of what our proposed revenues are for the 2022-2023 school year. Last year, we utilized $400,000 from our reserves to balance our budget. We will continue to utilize reserves to balance our budget, but at a slightly smaller rate. We will be utilizing $125,000 from our retirement reserve and $50,000 from our unemployment reserve fund. We are anticipating that our revenues for next year will be $23,127,972. And again, that shows a budget to budget increase of $668,691 with a 2.98% increase. Here's a brief overview of our three-part budget and a comparison from last year to this year. New York State asks that we present our budget within three components. The first component is administrative, the second component is instructional, and the third component is capital. I will discuss each of these areas in depth in the next few slides. On this slide, you will see a description of our administrative budget. Our administrative budget consists of all areas that help our school district run. You will see on this slide an increase in terms of our costs for legal services, and we have increased that allocation to better reflect what we spend in that area. You will see a decrease in terms of central services, and that is central data processing. We have reallocated costs to reflect their purpose in that area. And then you'll also see a slight decrease in terms of special programming. And those are costs that are associated with professional development for our teachers. And because it is a service that directly benefits students, those costs have been reallocated into the instructional component. What you will see in this area is an increase of 3.6% for the upcoming school year. I'd like to take a moment to talk about our instructional budget. What you will see for the upcoming school year is a recommendation for an increase in funding of 4.35%. I'd like to take a moment to talk about areas that have changed within this budget. Some of these changes that you will see are due to realigning of BOCES costs to more accurately reflect the areas that those costs support. In terms of teaching handicapped, which is all of the funding for our students with disabilities, you will see a 16% increase. And that is directly due to the needs of the students that we service. In terms of occupational education, you'll see a decrease. That's tied to CT enrollment through BOCES, and it fluctuates yearly. You will see a reduction in terms of special schools, and that is our summer school program. We are utilizing a portion of our federal stimulus money to pay for some of the summer school programming that is happening for this upcoming school year. You will see an increase in terms of co-curricular activities, and that is to directly reflect some of the contractual costs that are associated with those activities. For example, the costs for the rights for our musicals. You will see an increase in terms of interscholastic athletics, and that is directly reflected to the uniform replacement plan that we have put in place to ensure that our students have new uniforms on a regular basis. You will see an increase in terms of pupil transportation as well, and that is almost entirely tied to fuel costs. The last area I'd like to talk about is our capital budget. You will see a decrease in this area of 4.13%. And that decrease is directly tied to changes in terms of our debt service. One thing that is a bit counterintuitive for the community is to understand that debt is a good thing for school districts to have. It is a source of revenue for state aid, and when our debt service begins to decrease, that can long-term impact our revenues for state aid in the future. Dr. Ward will be talking more about this as we move towards our next capital project. You will see an increase in terms of central services within this budget, and that is tied primarily to utilities. So here's just a brief view of our three-component budget and how that's broken down compared to last year. What you'll see is that we continue to maintain the same level of funding to each of our component areas. Administration continues to reflect about 9.3% of our budget, instruction almost 70%, and capital between 20 and 21%. I would like to take a moment to review what the community will see on our ballots when you come to vote on May 17th. We will be asking you to vote on 4 different propositions. I'd like to take a moment to briefly review each of them. Our first proposition is our proposed budget of $23,127,972. Within that budget, we have allocated $100,000 for a capital outlay project, which will provide building aid for us the following year. We plan on utilizing that money for either sanitation upgrades, bus garage repairs, front portico repairs, or gymnasium repairs. The second proposition is to purchase 2 65-passenger buses. This will allow us to ensure that our fleet is fully under warranty. And the cost of the buses will be bonded, so there will be no direct cost to the taxpayers for this area. Our third proposition is a land purchase of $40,000. Dr. Ward is going to explain a bit about that piece.
One of the things that we need to fix here in Cato-Meridian in our school district is our sanitation system. We have been in violation with our current sanitation system since 2016-17 school year. Since 2016 and 17, we have tried several fixes to fix our current system. However, what we have found is now we need to make a capital investment in our sanitation system to permanently fix the system. So, we would like to purchase 10 acres of land from our neighbor to put a leach field large enough to serve all buildings within our school district. This will ensure a permanent fix for our school district. And also, we want you to know that $40,000 will come out of this year's budget because we will have at least $40,000 left over to purchase this land.
The final proposition is to establish a new $5 million capital reserve. The purpose of a new capital reserve is to minimize taxpayer impact on building projects. We do have a current capital reserve, but it has been utilized for previous projects and can only be funded for an additional $200,000.
So it is important to point out in Proposition 4, yes, we had a $5 million capital reserve, but once you use that reserve, you have to reestablish another capital reserve. So that's why we're asking for another $5 million capital reserve, because we only have about $200,000 worth of room in our last capital reserve. We also want you to know that the reason New York State allows school districts to maintain capital reserves is to really have that least amount of impact over time and to make sure our facilities are meeting the standards of today's educational world. What you also see during voting is voting for our 3 board candidates: Kathy Brott, Kristen Cox, and Tim Homer. They all have been serving on our current board. They are the 3 candidates running for our 3 vacant seats.
Our annual budget vote is May 17th, 2022. All voting can be done in person at Cato-Meridian Elementary, and absentee ballots can be obtained from the district clerk. This is Marion. All absentee ballots are due in the district office no later than 4 p.m. on May 17th, 2022. Please vote. We look forward to your participation in supporting our school district.
And also, after reviewing this video, if you have any questions about our school budget, please reach out to myself or Ms. Kubiak, and we'd be happy to go through different pieces of our budget with you. Thank you very much.